Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the first 100 days. This season, we'll ask revenue leaders to share their stories around building alignment between sales, marketing, RevOps. Our guests today are Jamie Sewell, VP of Growth at Dreamfuel, where she works closely with CEO and founder Kevin Bailey. The two are working together to transition from being a professional coaching company to offering a software that can actually help teams gain revenue alignment through neuroscience and mental performance. So as they are creating that, they are also finding alignment themselves in the first 100 days as a startup. Jamie and Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much,
Thanks for
Trinity.
having us. Excited to be here.
So if you can take us back to beginning a little bit. So how did you decide to go from mindset coaching to software, SaaS?
Well, we're not fully transitioning over to software. The software that we're building initially was conceived out of the fact that really there's no company that's built a great tool for measuring mental performance within teams. So obviously, as you guys know, it's easier to work on things you can track and measure. If you're not tracking and measuring it, you're working on anecdotal evidence, stuff like that. It's a little tricky as a coach. So the software started to spin out of the idea that our coaches, our mental performance coaches and performance psychologists, just wanted to take a daily pulse of the people they're coaching, their mindsets. And from there, we built Intrinsic, which is the software, the tracking software, and we're starting to see just the amazing data that comes out of that and what you can do with it, which is almost limitless. I mean, to have a true snapshot of a team's mindset, when is their confidence faltering? When is discipline falling off? When is motivation peaking? When is their vitality suffering? Things like that is just a very powerful view into a team. So there's just a whole lot of goodness coming from it. But yeah, coaching is still fundamental to what we do, and we love coaching, and it's really, the human part is so important, but the software is certainly giving us some cool things to consider and look at as we expand and grow the business.
I'll just add in there that I actually went through Dreamfuel's program last fall, and at the time, Dreamfuel was starting to build the technology and formulate it, and that was one of the things that like really stood out to me was like going through like a really comprehensive like assessment of what my mindset was like as a baseline. Like that was just so interesting to me to be like, whoa, what is my baseline mindset? Like I'd never really thought about trying to measure and track it like that, because you're just kind of used to your thoughts being kind of habitual, right? Like they're your thoughts and they're with you all the time. And being able to really analyze and be thoughtful about where am I in this moment, and then what are my mental patterns over time. So that was really interesting to me, even before I joined the team.
I'm very excited about this topic. Like I'm always talking about how athletes, like they optimize their day, they track their progress every day. And it's much, much easier to do this when you're an athlete than when you're in business. So I'm always thinking about like, how can you bring the mindset of like, I'm this athlete, I'm optimizing my nutrition, everything that I do, how I sleep, and to be the best in the world. And we're trying to be the best in the world in the business that we're doing, but it's so much harder to track the progress every day.
Yeah, exactly. This stuff comes out of athletics, but it's like, most athletes are doing a physical game that requires the mind. We're doing a mental game 100%. I mean, there's not many physical elements to what we're doing other than good posture. So I would say, yeah, it's a big category that's just starting to emerge.
As you, Kevin, and Justin, Jamie, talk about like how Dreamfuel helps you and like what Dreamfuel is, I can see like Christian's eye just like sparkle. I think that's his goal. It just become like the elite business athlete.
That's exactly right. We actually talk all the time about our clients being, corporate athletes. So nailed it, Trinity. That's exactly what we're creating.
Awesome.
Jamie, you mentioned, I didn't know that you started, like, your relationship started because you were a client of Dreamfuel. Like how did you end up joining Dreamfuel?
Well, so I am a bit of like a neuroscience and mindset junkie already. And I really, when the pandemic kind of started, I kind of had my own come to Jesus moment and was like, I was working in technology and was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I really enjoy my work, but the meaning doesn't feel like it's totally there. And personally, I had been really exploring a lot of the things that Dreamfuel coaches on. And so, for myself, I had this internal alignment. It was like, no, I'm very passionate about coaching and neuroscience and actually bringing those tools into the workplace, because I feel like people spend so much time working. And so it's a big source of both fulfillment and stress, right? And so for me, I'm like, there's so many amazing tools at our fingertips that just aren't being brought into the workplace. And so I was kind of having those aha moments and signed up for Dreamfuel's program last fall. And I was in a sales role, so it was just kind of a perfect fit for me to continue to explore things that I already loved and was really passionate about, and integrate that into my own career. So that's kind of how our relationship started, and then the stars aligned, and here we are.
That's awesome. We could segue over to like the business side. So, but I noticed something. So, Jamie, your background was in sales, and now you're running growth, which I'm guessing is marketing, right?
Right now, it's mostly it's a blend, right? Depends on the day,
Yeah.
depends on the week.
Well, we wear all hats at startups, but I think.
Yeah.
And then Kevin, I noticed your background. You were CMO at some points, right? Like you were in marketing, and now as a founder, essentially doing sales.
Yeah, I founded an agency, technology-enabled agency back in the day. So I've worn the CMO hat before. It was a while ago. Some things change, some things stay the same. Um, but yeah, in this run, I'm the founder, mainly focused on innovation, and the amount of the amount of concepts that you have to wrap your head around to be good in this industry is sometimes a little bit mind-numbing. So I spend most of my free time on reading up on neuroscience and stuff like that rather than marketing.
So segue over to like the business. So as you guys going through the like the transition right now, setting up the startup, the software company, tell me a little bit more like the different challenges that you're seeing and how you're essentially building the go-to-market engine together. Like what's going on?
Lots of experimentation. Lean startup style, where Jamie and I are trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, we're still in our first 100 days. We've got tight timelines, and tight budgets, and a small team, right? And so, like Kevin said, it really is coming down to running experiments, running them quickly, seeing what works, and then just continuing to innovate as we go.
We're bringing mindset tools to bear, obviously, during this first 100 days. Like, we did a little visualization of finding a growth hack and how that'll feel when we find that one thing, it's going to help us really hit that tipping point. So we've been putting our own tools to work on this, but yeah, it's a lot of uncertainty as you're trying to really find. I mean, people love our service. We have very happy clients, but they've all come through referral. So now that we're going outside of our network and trying to cultivate new business, that's where the experimentation is. So we have product market fit, but we don't have yet, I don't know the terminology you use on this, but like we don't have an outside market. People love the product, but we have to learn how to explain it properly and sell it properly to people who've never heard of us. And that's the journey.
Is that the transition now? Like for you, when it's like, what is the difference between, in a sense, previously, where you're like, in a sense, the coaching company versus now? I think it's pretty much a SaaS on top a little bit. So this means that a lot of the product or even some of the offerings that you have might even stay the same or like packaged into a tool. But what is different? What is the same?
Dreamfuel came out of my own experiences as a founder back at my first technology-enabled agency, and just became obsessed with this and started getting my master's in neuroscience and diving in, and then started working for basically friends of mine who are founders of high-growth technology companies back in about 2016, and started working with sales teams and executive teams. And two of those companies have now become unicorns. Greenlight Guru and Link Squares. We have another one that's like right about there, and then we have a few others in the wings. And mindset basically is the practice of teaching people how to show up consistently no matter what environmental factors are influencing them. So, an elite performer is just consistent every day. Well, if your sales team's consistent, you're probably going to raise conversion rates rather than, a high performer is up and down. An elite performer is just consistent. So, that allowed us to get a lot of referrals. We would be able to show a 44% lift in conversion rates. Greenlight's a good example of that. Just mindset alone, they had a 44% increase in conversion rates, 2 quarters versus 2 quarters with and without us. So that allowed us to kind of get out and work with other companies, and we've just seen a lot of success in that. And then now with the tracking software, we have just offered this standalone. Now there is coaching, but it's basically the software paired up with video and a playbook. Granted, we're still selling live coaching in group sessions as well as individual, and that's a really important. We have 4 performance psychologists on the team. That's a very important thing that we do. But yeah, we're starting to sell a little bit of the standalone. And the big transition, like I said before, is we've always sold within our little network. People who know who we are, they're able to reach out to their buddy and say, hey, is Dreamfuel working out for you? Yeah, boost conversion rate. Great. All right, just double checking. And now it's like this whole group of people who've never heard of it, who don't even understand the category, who don't understand that mental performance is something that could truly impact the bottom line. We're trying to get that message out there and a little more sophisticated with software for sure.
Do you see that? Like as you describe it, I'm like, yes, we definitely, our team would love to see something like this as well, especially in the remote world. So do you see any kind of like difference in terms of like your clients and what they're facing in terms of mental performance before the pandemic, before the whole work from home versus now? And any tips for revenue folks out there, like sales and marketing too?
Yeah, COVID was as hard as it's been for a lot of people. It certainly wasn't for Dreamfuel. And it really turned the knob up for us. And even this, whatever we're going into right now, little economic blip, also a positive thing for us. Anything that causes stressors. So working in an environment that's remote is definitely, you're going to feel a little bit disconnected from your staff. So knowing how their mindset's doing, I just talking to a high growth CEO yesterday, and he's like, yeah, it's a whole different world. Like people are second guessing each other, projecting, thinking things that aren't true about each other, stuff that, wasn't happening in the office. So, and because we're not around each other, we just are just guessing about each other. So it was easy to say, well, what if you could actually tangibly look at people's mindsets and understand, what's influencing it and what's not. But yeah, it's a whole different, it is a new normal, and teams don't, well, when you're with somebody physically, we mirror each other. We have mirror neurons. You can sense generally how they're doing. You can't pick up as many nonverbals over Zoom like this. It's just tough to tell. So yeah, it's been a really good thing for us, an unfortunate thing for society, but maybe it's helping us all, level up a little bit, in our in our mental health. So.
Yeah, visualizations have always been a really popular tool to bring teams together. And, so Christian, you mentioned athletes earlier, right? Like athletes are famous for using visualizations before big games and things like that. And I think the challenge is, that Kevin talked about with, we're not able to pick up on all those social cues. That's for sure happening. But I think the visualizations are very popular or powerful for our teams because there is that subliminal like connection that I think everybody can kind of slow down and really kind of check in and at least imagine, like they're all imagining the same thing. And I do think that has like a very unifying effect on teams, even when
Yeah, just to fill in there, at the inception of a quarter, beginning of every quarter, with any team that we work with, we always visualize the end of the quarter, hitting their goals, how it's going to feel, what's going to change, what behaviors they want to change, how they want to work together, collaborate, coordinate, etc. So that's something that we do that does allow for a shared consciousness among the teams we work with. It's kind of fun. But yeah, it's a new world for sure.
Not just like individual performance. You say like mention teams, but not just a sales team, right? We talk about a lot about revenue alignment, but all of these things, the neuroscience, the mental performance, ability to relate and trust somebody else, like also in the same boat as you, helps with revenue alignment too, like marketing and sales. If you don't see each other and don't have that trust that you guys just talked about, things could fall apart and distrust and things like just not great for a company performance.
No doubt about it.
Are you
Yeah.
trying to convince Kevin of his product? Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Jamie and I are working together to find alignment on this in this first 100 days, even as practitioners of this stuff, like we're having to use the tools. You're taking, like, I'm a founder who built something pretty much by myself at the beginning, and then started to bring teams on. Every other company I've had, people from Jump Street that I've co-founded with. So it's been an interesting little quest to like expand this thing out and try and make this thing about more than just my thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
So
Can't explain that any better, but
the way I think about this is that we have connections everywhere, right? Like it's the within the team, it's with colleagues, it's also in sales. I'm always thinking of sales. I mean, we build a connection also with a customer, and as you say, it's harder over Zoom, it's harder over video. So certainly something I'm always wondering how can that be improved. But if you're thinking about like any of the relationships internally or externally, like you talked about visualizing the goal or like the quota achievement at the end of the quarter. What would you say? Is there something where you say this is something revenue leaders can do immediately to like get a little bit better here? What are some quick tips from the pros?
visualization is incredible. If you're not doing it, either talk to us or do some Google searches. It's such a powerful way to help your mind align with the outcomes you're going after. Um, Everybody who does it becomes a massive fan as long as they do it properly. There's a few things to know, which is you have to be able to work yourself up into an emotive state. Emotion is what creates neuroplasticity. The whole point of visualization is to get the subconscious mind, which controls about 95% of your thoughts, to back up the behaviors you want to do. So it's like you might know the behaviors of success, but if you're not pulling them off properly, it's not going to work. And sometimes people won't even do the behaviors. So you got to get the subconscious mind aligned. So subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what is real, believe it or not, what is real and what you imagine really well. So when you close your eyes and you see yourself and your team, closing that big deal, at the Christmas party with the CEO signing on DocuSign, and celebrating the win together and feeling it viscerally, that feeling runs the neurotransmitters that create the neuroplasticity in the brain to accept that that event is going to happen. And one of the best stories I have about that, I mean, this goes back to sports, but Anna Rohr, who's a performance coach at our company, she was a former pro athlete, and her dad was a neuropsychologist and taught her all this stuff. But she she ran a 10-minute 2 mile in high school, which at the time was kind of unheard of. And she kept visualizing it and visualizing it and visualizing it, finishing that race, 10 minutes and 2 miles, 2 5-minute miles back to back. And she had a reporter come up before she ran the race, and the reporter was like, "Hey, Anna, I know you're strong, but, like, people don't do this at your age, probably not going to happen," like, kind of did one of those things with her. And Anna always responds that she was absolutely shocked that he said it. Because her subconscious mind thought the race was already over and she won and she did it. So like that kind of confidence that closes deals. Like when you go into a meeting thinking there's no question that this prospect's getting on board, visualization before big meetings, stuff like that, super powerful because you're putting off that kind of confidence. The buyer senses no fear, no uncertainty in you, which can sometimes be misconstrued as maybe insecurity in your product or something like that. They get nothing but pure confidence. That was the big thing I did at my first company when at a certain point I had to go in and sell, and we were pretty large at the time. And I used a form of visualization we call rehearsal journaling before every meeting. My close rate about doubled, and I set a sales record. And just every meeting, I would just visualize it, like the end of the meeting being like, "All right, we're in. Send us the agreement." and I would just get really pumped about it. And then these were big companies like Intel and Ashley Furniture and stuff like that.
I've never tried this, and I really want to. As I keep here listening to you, Kevin. So when you say visualizing the end, like, is it literally like seeing everything happening, like watching a movie?
But you're there, so you're not. It's not. You don't feel like you're watching. So, I mean, I'll try to do like a training on visualization, but I'll try and give you the real highlights. You have to incept the visualization. So what I like to do is called 5 4 3 2 1. So the way you incept a visualization to get the unconscious mind to like buy in that it's happening is you have to use your five senses. So 5 4 3 2 1 would be like, all right, you close your eyes. What are five things I'm seeing? So, like closing a deal. Okay, I'm seeing, the decision maker at Intel. He's smiling. I see the Zoom screen. I'm seeing my dog come up, et cetera. Then four things I'm hearing. I'm hearing him say, "We're in." Three things I'm feeling. I'm feeling excited, elated, whatever. Two things I'm smelling, smelling victory, whatever, like smelling the candle on the table. And then one thing I'm tasting, so I might take a sip of my water in my mind. And at that point, then you go with the visualization and you're there and you can kind of feel it out and play it out. There's a great podcast. Jamie, what's that podcast?
Reach, B2B marketing, I think.
Check this out. You want to talk about visualization, not to get super geeky on this, but so remember Cool Runnings, the Jamaican
Yep.
bobsled team? They did end up winning bobsled. A majority of their training was done mentally. They didn't have a bobsled track. So they actually trained mentally, use visualization to rehearse that over and over again until their bodies could do it without being on a track, and ended up winning the Olympics. So the power of visualization is great. Drew Brees, he spends as much time visualizing as he does actually physically practicing. Like 45 minutes a day. Maybe it's not as much as he spends physically practicing, but 45 minutes a day, that's his visualization practice. Like that's intense.
That's incredible. Like, Jamie, when you joined Dreamfuel, did you already practice some of these techniques before?
Well, I used some of the techniques before I went through Dreamfuel's program. But actually, the thing I liked probably the most, well, there were two things I liked probably the most about the program. And the first was actually the accountability. And the second one was actually the framework. Because, you read all of these things, right? Like meditate, visualize, journal, exercise, do all of these techniques, and it's going to like radically transform your life. And, you can be like, okay, cool. But, to Kevin's point earlier, a lot of it comes down to consistency and then understanding where to pull in different tools. And so I think that that's one of the things that makes Dreamfuel so special is that, we work with such busy professionals. They don't have all this time to experiment with all these things on their own. And so what we've really done is like distilled the program down into like an actionable framework that they can apply in 15 minutes every single day and see, significant results in just one quarter. So that's really the magic, I think, in the program. So, I did some of these things on my own, and then throughout the program, really got to refine and hone my own techniques, and then learned so much more. 52 different techniques that we train on. And so it's a lot, right? And so it's just about putting tools in people's toolbox that they can pull out for different situations and make their own.
15 minutes. That's great. That's not like when people hear these things, they're like they gotta be committing to something massive.
That's about there's a lot of risk in doing this stuff too, because if you do it wrong, it can be pointless. Meaning like what I just said, emotion is what creates neuroplasticity. The only point of doing visualization is to create neuroplasticity. So if you're not generating emotion and visualization, you could do it over and over again and have absolutely no benefit from it if you don't understand that little piece of neuroscience. So it's not like working out in the gym where like you can be like, okay, I'm pushing 10 more pounds on this bench press. It's like you can't. There's no tape measure for the mind. Again, one of the reasons we're trying to track it, but it's like you you have to know how this stuff works if you want to do it quickly and it to be effective.
Sounds like SaaS onboarding to me.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
So we talk about visualization. There must be other like mental performance practices, techniques as well, right? Because I'm thinking of, I don't know if you heard of like anyone having like the condition called aphantasia. Like there's like 1% or 2% of the world that have this, and they don't even know they have it, where they can't visualize. Like when they close their eyes, they don't see what we're talking about. So how can they do like these techniques?
And
Yeah, so you can still do visualization with other senses. So you can close your eyes and just imagine without seeing, Christian, celebrating some sort of victory. Like you can just, like Christian, you just hear Christian in your mind going, "We did it, we hit it, we got it, let's go," and you're like, "Yeah, let's go." And you can hear the glasses clanking. You don't have to see it. Just you can use the auditory sense to kind of
I'm
pull a
not totally sure
visualization out
because
too.
I am one of these 1%, and
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure I can do this. But maybe it's something.
So you don't have a voice in your head.
He might have 0, 1, 1, 0, 0.
So you don't just have the visual cortex not active. You can't hear as well.
Yeah.
Any senses? Can you smell in your mind?
No. What? People can smell in their mind. That's weird.
You can. I can smell a rose right now.
No.
Christian is a special case.
Wow. All right. I've met people who can't do the visual, but I've never met somebody who all senses are inactive. There's plenty of other mental performance tools you can use besides visualization. We've stuck on visualization because it's a hot topic. But that's one of 50 things.
I can meditation still works. Like I can still focus on stuff like how to feel your own body. So.
Okay, I mean, like frankly, if I'm you, Christian, and I'm trying to use visualization, I would do it by journaling. So basically, as if journaling is a great tool for visualization that doesn't use any internal senses. But it still tricks the subconscious mind into thinking something happens. So you take a journal, open it up, and then just date it in the future. So you could date at the end of the day. You could be like 6:23, 8 p.m. and just journal like you're writing a journal entry about how a certain meeting went or how your day went. That was actually the tool I used before sales calls. I didn't do closed eyes visualization. I would often journal about like the meeting and how it went. Like it was the end of the day and I was just doing a daily review. So that's a great tool if you really don't have any internal sensory input.
So I know that we're at the bottom of the hour, but do you have any other like final words or advice for revenue practitioners out there where they want to improve their performance, but might not have access to Dreamfuel yet?
I mean, so this is, I think, really important for the first 100 days. I mean, it really comes down to belief. You have to believe you can do it. So visualization is a way of cultivating belief. If you don't believe you're going to do it, I mean, I think it's a really overused Henry Ford quote. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So during first 100 days, when you're getting a revenue team going and it's total confusion and you're experimenting and you have nowhere to point, like that's where you have to cultivate belief. And so you do your best in believing in each other and do your best in believing in the mission and look around for inspiration wherever you can find it. Celebrate the small wins. Dopamine is the neuromodulator of motivation. So you got to cultivate dopamine wherever you can find it. So look for the little micro wins, celebrate it with your team. An experiment went, the right direction. Great. Let's talk about that. Let's get excited about it. Because that's what gives you the dopamine to do the next thing. If you can't run, so adrenaline is like the hormone of, obviously energy and effort. You can only run adrenaline so long without dopamine before it triggers a quit response in you. If you're in that mode, look for little ways to recognize yourself, recognize each other, show gratitude to get you through this point. And that's what we're having to do right now.
That's amazing. And I think that's so timely. End of quarter, also the world's on fire. Well, seems to be on fire.
Always.
Everyone's running around. So I think like this is a great reminder of everyone out there to celebrate the small wins. And then because I feel like everyone say like show gratitude every day. It seems a little bit fluffy, but the way that you explain it, how it works, like in our body, I think that makes sense. Well, it makes the most sense so far.
Yeah. Gratitude's great too. I mean, yin to yang. I mean, gratitude runs serotonin. Yeah. Serotonin's a happiness molecule. You need serotonin. Dopamine, though, is triggered from celebration, recognition. So little hits of dopamine. And by the way, noradrenaline, which is euphoric effort hormone, the sister of adrenaline, is derived from the dopamine molecule. So when you celebrate the win, it creates dopamine, and then that dopamine gets converted into noradrenaline, which is what gives you the effort to do the next thing.
I love this trend, like this explanation. How come like all the like cute poster they're talking about like show gratitude every day? They should have like defined text to explain this, and I would have bought it in this much longer.
Science is the
this makes
bridge.
so
I mean,
much more sense.
people call this stuff woo-woo and whatever, and it's like it's not woo-woo at all. Like this is the operating manual for humans. Like if you understand how this stuff works, you understand how to win. You know, it's simple.
Yeah.
But we keep calling it woo-woo and trying to put it off. Like, yeah, you're just not reading the operator's manual. You know, then neuroscience hasn't always been around at this level. You know, it's beautiful now. Like it's all out there. You just gotta learn it. We're trying to make it easier.
You know, one of the things that popped out for me in the program with Kevin is he said, you know, everybody learns how to drive a car, but nobody actually gets taught how to drive their mindset. It's so true, right? Like we just kind of operate habitually. Whatever that status quo is becomes our status quo, but it doesn't have to be.
Free will is a spectrum. It's a spectrum. Normally we're driven by our compulsions. So mindset is stepping into the driver's seat and actually taking control of the vehicle.
This is great. Now I can see why like the Dreamfuel is just word of mouth. You guys grew through word of mouth because
well, we love what you guys are doing. And like I said, the first 100 days, like we're experiencing it right now, even as mindset practitioners, it is not for the faint of heart. And so thanks for what you guys are doing, putting together this podcast.
No, for sure.
And thank you for inviting us.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming to and sharing your tips and practice and everything. It's incredible now. I have to like rethink the whole process.
Thanks for having us on. Take care.
Thank you, Trinity. Thank you, Christian. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.